I'm really, really excited to be able to host this critical conversation. All of us, I guess, have been in this space for a number of years, and we were just speaking earlier about how fantastic it is that this is front and centre as a topic, because we know that the online world has offline consequences, and so it's so great to, I guess, have the opportunity to discuss that today. It is a 16 days of activism event, Cuppa for a Cause, our very first one. And I wanted to start, of course, by doing an acknowledgement to the traditional custodians of the land where we meet today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. Pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, always was and always will be Aboriginal land. And of course, being here in Barangaroo, a really, really special place to acknowledge our custodians here. I wanted to start as well by sharing a couple of statistics around the impact of women and girls by the online environment. So today in 2025, 1 in 4 women globally have experienced online harassment and abuse. 75% of reports to our eSafety Commissioner, our overarching government body, I guess, our key regulator in Australia, 75% of reports to them at the moment are from women and girls around serious and significant cyber abuse. 55% of those women and girls have experienced anxiety or panic attacks as a result of their experiences. 61% have lost self-esteem, 63% have experienced sleep disturbances, 49% have feared for their personal safety and that of their families. The conversation that we're having today is a critical one, and I guess want to start by thanking each and every one of you for taking the time to participate in this, and I hope that you go back to your workplaces, to your families, and really share what you've learnt today so that we can continue this really important conversation. Okay, I wanted to start, I guess, with you, Kath. You're an expert in digital violence, in product design and what needs to be done. But let's just rewind a little bit, because this is a bit of a new frontier for many people in the room. Can you explain what digital violence, or tech-facilitated gender-based violence, it's a big acronym, actually is, and how it shows up in people's lives today?
Tech-facilitated abuse or online violence is just abuse with a glow-up. So what I mean by that is that everyday products that we use, from our bank account to our energy and water accounts to our telephones to our insurance products, are now being misused because you have online access. And then you have online platforms and AI, which are now amplifying and magnifying that. So what do I mean by that is a car has always been a potential weapon in domestic abuse. Now you have smart cars that can be controlled by abusers, where they can stop somebody from driving further than a perimeter that they want. So it's an invisible fence. There's also, in the paper this week, they were talking about cat feeders that have cameras inside them that are being used and tapped into by abusers to monitor the people who live in the house. We know that there are toys that have cameras in them, that children are being gifted that are then they have cameras and tracking devices. So then, as previously safe address is no longer safe. Then we also see the rise of deepfakes and online creation of fake, not porn, fake abuse, which is really all designed to intimidate and harass and control somebody else. I'm really interested in this topic because I care a lot about financial abuse and tech-facilitated abuse, and all these versions of social engineering and what's called coercive control that are not, it's not what was happening behind closed doors and violence, but business has a role to play now to step in and make their products and services safer so they can't be misused or weaponised in this new tech world and tech environment.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy to think about how it is misused. The examples that you gave, I remember hearing about a woman who was going through a divorce, and while she was in her home, the settings on the air conditioning kept changing and she'd be freezing through the night. And she only realised after a number of months that she wasn't going crazy. It was her ex that was changing that remotely. So some really crazy things that many of us wouldn't kind of think about that women are having to experience in their day-to-day. Ren, you know, ReLove is such an incredible organisation, and we're going to talk a bit more about it obviously today. But could you share a bit about what you're seeing on the ground, where technology, I guess, is intersecting with the women and families that you work with?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think the points that you were making are so relevant because, you know, somebody's safety or location is, you know, a really huge risk to women when they're leaving. You know, when a woman has to leave, and, you know, try and remember the last time where you couldn't use your mobile phone or you lost it for the day, right? You literally are at a loss, right? You're powerless. So, you know, if you can be tracked through your phone, you know, if you can be found, if you're trying to leave and go to a new location and not be found, I mean, all your choices are being taken away. And then you're also talking about, you know, your children's computers, your children's phones. I mean, there's so many different ways we've seen people being found, and it's one of the things that when we work with people, they have reached that point where they've actually left and they've trying to get into safe housing. And that is such an important point for them because, you know, they often don't have their choice in where they're going to stay, and they are trying to get to a place where they can't be found. And unfortunately, you will know a lot more about that part of how people can be found, but, you know, people being geolocated, you know, there's so many ways that people can be found. And, you know, we find women being really, really afraid at that point, saying, you know, even when we write their address down to try and deliver their furniture, they can be very, very afraid that that information can be getting out into the wrong hands. So we have to be really careful about letting people not be found.
Absolutely. It's such an important point. You know, we can't really live without our digital devices these days, and they are essentially just a 24/7 tracking tool. And, you know, when our tech literacy sometimes is moderate, we might not understand how something might be put on our phones, our phone battery might be draining really quickly, and we might not realise what's going on that particular device, things that can be installed. It's a really tricky situation for women and their families trying to stay safe.
Can I just add to that
Yes.
too? There's also bank accounts. So you can't live without your phone and your bank account. And your bank account can be used to track you as well. So if I can log on to your bank account, I can see where you are spending money. We also know that businesses, unfortunately, are inadvertently disclosing those safe addresses, and the research that I've done shows it happens repeatedly, accidentally sending a safe address to a perpetrator of abuse. I've been personally involved in those cases where we've relocated people. I think if you don't design with that safety in mind, there's going to be these risks that you're seeing, Ren, all the time.
Yeah, it's such a great point, and why conversations like this are so important, because it's just not something that a lot of people even really think about. Now, Amanda, your story is incredibly powerful, and your experience, while not necessarily digitally led, still highlights how financial control can impact people. Do you mind sharing a bit about your journey and your experiences?
Yep, no problems. So for those of you who haven't read about us all, I'm a financial advisor and have worked in this space for over 20 years. Of the last 8, it's predominantly been with women, and a lot of those women are women leaving relationships, planning on leaving relationships, having been through financial or coercive control. And my story goes a little bit like I found myself on the other end of it. So even though I'm so well aware of what can happen and how it happens, it can still happen to me. Now, if that can happen to me, it can happen to anyone. And as you said, although not digital, the ramifications of that in that digital space are huge, with shared bank accounts and not being able to access money. My accounts were drained instantly because for me, it was an unfortunate, horrific, violent attack that had police and paramedics exiting me from my situation. And as soon as he was let out of jail, he went and drained the bank accounts. To everything. He set a new ID on his Instagram and befriended my children got friends to like posts, just those tiny little bits of I'm still here, I'm still watching you, all of those type of things are part of your safe plan when you leave, and when you know this as well. So I had an organisation in Victoria help me, Safe Steps, and the police put in a safety plan, which is don't take photos of your new home. You know, don't post that you're having a ball with your children somewhere. And it's really quite sad that we are losing that freedom purely because of the ability to track via those. The other thing in the work that I've been doing since is I found purpose in a not so great circumstance, and I've started to get a lot of statistics, and I'm lucky enough to have come across Catherine because of our shared purpose. And one of the horrific stats to me is the highest growing demographic of intimate partner abuse is age 15 to 25. Yeah. So as a group, I'm looking at our age here, we aren't doing it right. We think we're trying, but we're obviously not doing something. And so these conversations really matter to, one, hear what's going on, but as a collective, figure out how we are going to change this.
I remember the first time I heard those statistics around the 15-year-olds and to 25, and it was crazy to me, but ultimately it's also what our young people are learning is, you know, what a real man is, or what a real woman should do, and what happens in relationships where you're perhaps trying to show the way that you care, and in that way, for many young boys, for example, that's in controlling or telling them what to wear, or, you know, constantly wanting to connect with them and show, you know, that they're present. And it's a real, it's misconstrued, I guess, in terms of what we're teaching a lot of our kids in terms of healthy relationships. Amanda, what advice would you give someone trying to rebuild their life after a situation, I guess, like you've experienced, when everything is gone out of the bank accounts? Where do you even start?
At ReLove? Yeah. You know, I think one of the things I've learned is, you know, so I want to preface that with the person who hurt me was my second relationship, so not the father of my children, thank goodness. But for me, it was, I'd spent so long trying to be this independent, strong woman, starting my own business, being a single mum, doing Ironman triathlons, all of these things that made me feel confident, secure, all of these things. Self-worth was huge for me. And then to have it disintegrate before your eyes is that the true definition of independence is being able to ask for help. It took a long time, and some of the things I talk about is I sit here today and can say I'm a financial advisor and it happened to me. I couldn't tell my clients what happened to me. I felt so much guilt and shame, and so for a woman fleeing or trying to rebuild, it's the first point is share. The more you share, the more likely you are to not lose all of those things so quickly. I just delved into my own world of just guilt. And so I think storytelling, I think understanding that long after bruises on people fade, that the agony and the trauma still exist, and being open to that and being able to go to organisations. You know, every business should have details of where to get help. You know, we have 000 on the boards, and we have work health and safety. I think every single organisation should have a domestic violence safe line, whether it's in Melbourne Safe Steps, Orange Door, ReLove, whoever it is. So you have to step by step and be kind to yourself, and get your crew. Of which will be a financial advisor. The banks are great now. I've had several clients, and this is not my story, but I've had a client who was very much coercively controlled and financially controlled, and I sent her off to the bank to take money out of her account and put it into a different account. And there was a young boy, it was a Bendigo bank, and this young boy who was at the front counter said, "Look, I'm not sure about that. Could I just, I might go into a different room." And he asked her. he actually said to her, is someone making you take this money out? And we don't hear many good stories like that. So then I rang the bank, obviously, and said, I just want to say this is what happened at Bendigo Bank Altona, and more people should be like that. So I think reaching out to the financial counsellors is a big one, you know, because they know all of the steps to go and protect. Because, you know, in fact, people like me have got Catherine's number. I could call her, but not everyone's
You're connected now. That's so important. I love that story as well. And what that comes down to is education and awareness, isn't it? Where has he learnt that? And the role that organisations can play in that awareness is so critical. This isn't a situation that is just left in someone's home, and when they come to work, you know, they're at work and then they go back to it. We've all got to get involved in this conversation. And I really agree as well with what you said about having, you know, numbers that people can call, and organisations as well understanding what their responsibilities are around safe work. A lot of the time when I speak to businesses and I say there is a positive duty on businesses in this country to showcase what they're doing to protect their employees in online environments, I don't know about the three of you, but there's sort of a look of confusion and shock. It's not something that they've actually thought much about. They think about the physical world, but not about what perhaps might happen online and what responsibility there may or may not be. It's really, really important. So Kath, let's get into product design, how we can start to empower organisations to do things a little bit differently. First things first though, how do you get organisations to take something like this seriously?
I think more are taking it seriously, which is really terrific. So my work started 10 years ago when I worked at Commonwealth Bank, and I set up our strategy to support or to really tackle domestic and financial abuse. And that started with, what do we do for our people and the workforce that you were talking about? How do we support victim survivors? And then slowly businesses have started saying, what do we need to do when there is someone who uses violence in our workplace? How do we respond to that? Then we next said, how do we support our customers? So the first part is, and where most people start, is what do you do when there's a victim survivor and comes in and needs some support? How do you support there? And then we also said, how do we use our scale and our influence across society? Fast forward to 2019, and I was running a specialist team supporting customers experiencing vulnerability, and they particularly with a particular focus on customers experiencing domestic and family violence. And one of them showed me in the account of a woman that we were supporting that she had received payments into her account. They're only 1 cent at a time. And they were being used as a messaging service. So they had abusive messages written in the transaction descriptions. Really awful messages. And when I talked to the team, I said, have you seen this? And they were saying, yeah, we see it all the time. And one of them said, what's really chilling is when you see those messages and then you say, I love you, I want you back. Ooh. And I just got goosebumps then. So I had a team of data scientists and I said to them, is this a thing? And they looked at 11 million transactions in a 3-month period and found about 24,000 problematic messages. We also looked at gender and age as well, but there were 8,000 that were really serious forms of abuse. I read one lot of messages, 900 messages, 1 cent at a time. It cost $9 for this reign of terror in the bank account.
Over what period of time?
That was over 2 days.
Wow.
And you imagine, that's what we did. So you imagine, you get those alerts on your phone when something's happening, and imagine that, and it's coming through your bank account. So that's when I was introduced to safety by design. We spoke to people with lived experience. We spoke to people in the community sector and the eSafety Commissioner. One customer had complained to us, that's it. The community sector had seen this happening, and the eSafety Commissioner said, apply safety by design, which is her framework for the tech sector. Make sure your platforms are safe for the users. So we did that and came up with 52 possible interventions, and I took that to the industry and convinced the industry to move. I tell you that story because banks between them have now blocked more than 1 million messages in real time. They use artificial intelligence and machine learning to monitor those patterns because you could put any words in. They write to the people who are sending those messages, and more than 90% of people who get a warning letter stop sending the abuse through a bank account. And they also provide support to the recipients, and now they report really concerning messages to law enforcement as well. And we know in New South Wales alone, there's been 250 odd intelligence reports, 12 arrests and 5 convictions as a result of that work. When I tell that story, everyone does what you did and says, "What? We can't believe it." And so now I spend my time talking to businesses saying, well, here are the ways that your products and services are being misused. Let's start with that one, but also let's look at your bank account, your insurance account, the energy account, the utility account, telco. These are all the ways your products are being used in ways you never anticipated and you didn't mean. Would you like to be the social media companies that don't do anything about it and point at it and admire the problem, or would you like to treat this as a business risk and close the loopholes that domestic abusers are exploiting? And they say yes.
This is incredibly... Can we give Kath a massive round of applause for your work? Because had you not been that first mover, that person that wants to shape that environment to be better, to actually take those steps, these scenarios, they wouldn't be a reality. So congratulations.
Thank you.
It's incredibly important work. So you've talked about safety by design in practice. I looked at this earlier. So just to share with everybody what that looks like, there's 3 pillars. So the first is service provider responsibility. The second is user empowerment and autonomy, and transparency and accountability is that third pillar. So they're the areas, I guess, that we're looking into. Have you had any amazing wins, Kath, from those organisations that have come on board? What number are we at now? Because you do have a bit of a tracker, don't you?
I do. So I took those objectives or those principles that you talked about and wrote a paper in 2022 called Design to Disrupt, where I tailored them for other products and services. And basically that is using the same principles, but for an implementation, it's understand that your products are and will be used as weapons. Do the research, find out what that is. Design for safety, so just do a risk assessment. And most organisations don't look at, in a risk assessment, how is one customer manipulating your products, services and systems to hurt another customer. So do put what you know into a risk assessment and design safer outcomes, putting controls in place. And then the third part of that is communicate acceptable behaviour. So I proposed that every bank initially, but now I say every business should do this, put into your terms with your customers, financial abuse, and that's where I focus, but domestic and financial abuse are really serious problems. They have serious impacts. If you misuse our products and services for those purposes, there will be consequences. It could be a warning, it could be suspension, closure of account, it could be a report to law enforcement. Nowhere had ever done that before. We're now up to 60 organisations in Australia across 12 sectors that have those terms in their customer contracts. They have more than 20 million customers between them. I run a campaign called Respect and Protect. Thank you for mentioning it.
Yes.
You can go and check on that website whether your provider has those, and you can also tell me if they don't and you would like them to, and we will mention that to them.
Strongly mention
People
that to
power.
them.
I know from research that we've done that more than 96% of Australians want these protections. 3 in 4 want them from the businesses that they deal with, and 20% say they'll definitely switch. Another 40% say they might. So I want people power to compel every company in Australia to put these protections in place. And it's not to close the accounts of perpetrators, it's to set the bar for acceptable behaviour. Yeah. And just like when we'd get on planes after September 11, there were big signs up, you can't joke about terrorism. We just need that from every product and service provider. You can't misuse our products for domestic and financial abuse.
Such a powerful statement, isn't it? If we had a societal expectation of standards of behaviour around this, what potentially could change? It would be incredible. And Amanda, how might this scenario, how might safety by design have impacted you through your experience?
Oh, probably, so I was triathlete, so even things like triathlon clubs and your payment portals or the gym memberships that you have. So to be able to stand as a community and say that's not on, we don't agree, there will be ramifications, may not have. I think unfortunately, in cases like mine, I think someone's so broken, they're going to stay broken as an individual. But, I'm nearly there, and I was just a bit slow on getting on your website, but even my small little company is going to have those terms and conditions. So I am going to practice what I preach. But I think that the more people that are invested and have a voice, the more companies that will do it. So which is the people that don't want to be a part of that company that doesn't have that on their website, that would have been me. If I had have known about that, I would have been, nope, yes, no, you're out. So, because I see a lot of women as well. So that's the thing for me, is that there's lived experience and there's all this experience that so many of my clients have had, that now I direct them to make sure as a collective we're using those protected companies.
Yeah, absolutely. One last question, because then I want to get to you, Ren, to talk more about ReLove. In terms of gaps, Kath, this is a gendered crime. Are there specific areas that businesses need to focus on in terms of safety by design to address supporting women versus the general public? Are there any areas that people need to learn more about, to focus in on? It is a gendered crime, but is there anything else that you could share about that?
Yeah, look, it is a gendered crime. I think really where we need people to focus is speaking to people with lived experience to say what's going on. It is a gendered crime. It is mainly women who are the victim survivors. It is mainly men who are using violence and choosing to exert control in that way. But I don't think it matters that I don't think there needs to necessarily be a gendered response when it comes to safety by design. So it's actually it's a form of consumer protection that we're now starting to see in some sectors. We've got the social media delay that we were talking about. That's actually an onus on the platforms to make sure that young people are not on dangerous platforms that I don't even want to be on because of some of the content. That needs to go further and have that duty of care, but really if we start with it's a consumer protection, it doesn't need to be a gendered approach. How you support people when they come to you seeking that support, you have to recognise trauma, and you need to recognise that it's mainly going to be women.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Now, Ren, ReLove is such an incredible organisation known for helping women rebuild their lives and creating, importantly, really dignified spaces for them to do that, which I think is critical. For you, what's the biggest misconception that people have about women and their families fleeing violence?
Just checking that my voice is still on. Yeah, look, I think people believe that when you leave, that's the hardest part. But it's a really huge, it's very difficult to leave. But when you do leave, really the majority of women are choosing between living in fear or poverty. And I think all of these things that we've been talking about today contribute to that. When you can't access your bank account, when you might need to get yourself a safe phone, you're starting over with nothing. So and when you're actually going, you don't have choice in where you're going to go. So for us, I feel like we're working with women at that point when they have left, and they're usually rebuilding in a community that's new to them, in a location that's new to them. Their kids have to go to new schools. They have to rebuild without the community of people around them, and often they can't reach out to help with people that they know because they are afraid of being found. So really, that moment that you've heard people say, why didn't you leave? Well, we say that, it's almost logistically impossible. It's a monumental challenge for somebody to leave. And if a woman does leave, we believe that's the point that when people access safe housing, a roof over your head's not home, right? So that's where ReLove comes in, because we're trying to work with the community to gather those people and wrap our arms around them, and love is in our name. And it literally is community action at its best, to be able to help them, to be able to furnish their homes, but to give them that dignity of choice, to be able to rebuild their life as they would like it. And you know, while people think that this is just giving people furniture, we actually say it's economic empowerment, because it's giving people the stability and safety to be able to start over. And just giving somebody a roof over their head it's just simply not doing that. So we need to do all these other things to be able to start again.
Yeah, we really do. And
Can I echo?
yes, please, Amanda, go.
So I often, and we had a quick chat, and I had a chat to Ben about this before. I use the words when I'm talking about this as too scared to stay and too scared to leave. Yeah. And often people will judge the women that stay without thinking of what's stopping them from leaving. And it is normally security, roof over your head, and economic reasons. So that's why what Ren and ReLove and the other organisations are doing is huge, because too many women think that the scarier alternative is to leave. And if we could get more women leaving earlier, we would have less really bad statistics as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Ren, could you talk us through, like, what does it look like the first few days a woman comes to you, she's been in that space of fear and poverty? Like, I keep replaying those words that you mentioned in my head. That's where they're at. What does that look like for them?
Yeah, so when people walk through our door, you know, there's been so many hurdles for people to even be able to get safe housing. So when people walk in our door, what we see is people who are still in trauma. They are looking at that potential for a safer new future, but don't know how they're going to do it. We have a real experience pretty much every day with people when they come through, and ReLove's been very specifically designed so that it feels like a very safe environment. People come in, we meet and greet them. And there's a lot of trepidation and anxiety, not knowing what this experience is going to be like, and we walk them through this whole experience, and we make sure that the most important thing we do at ReLove is we listen. We ask them what they like, what they want, what they need, and we don't presume what they need. Sometimes you would think that people want everything, but actually they're not ready. They're not ready to suddenly fill up their home with everything. Sometimes they do want to take a lot, but you know, it's a really beautiful moment when you see that moment of people having this realisation that a new future is about to be possible. And we always say that from the moment they walk in our door, there's probably around the experience is about sort of 20 minutes into experience where it's starting to take hold. And this is actually going to happen because they're getting that moment of voice and choice and designing their home as they would like it. And we're not talking about just a couple of things here. We're talking about scented candles and pillows and throws and paintings, and there's just really a moment of joy. We've seen that in practice, and if we can give somebody that moment, our goal is to make the transition into housing as stress-free as possible. And if we can give people a moment of happiness and joy, that's a good day for us, and we think that we do that most days. So
it sounds like you do an amazing job, and I think it is just those first steps for a woman who hasn't had agency perhaps her entire life, it could be, so incredibly important. And we need to give ReLove, and then big fan of shout outs here, and Ben in the front row, amazing. Thank you for the work that you do. Now, this community-led model, how can everybody else in this room support the work that you do? Aside from the fact you can buy the furniture outside, it is pretty fantastic. So please do peruse. There's no reason we can't go shopping and learn. So what could people do to support ReLove?
Yeah, well, we're a really great believer that community is everything. Ben and I started a running group. That was 4.5 years ago, and nothing to do with what we're doing now. But you know, we had a group of friends that were running with us, and we thought, oh, we'll try and help 5 women to move into a safe house. It's just a little idea. This year, with the power of community, by so many people giving up their time, their knowledge, you know, their furniture, their dollars, you know, there's so many ways that people have been able to come together to do this together. This year, we are on track to rehome over 2,000 people, and that's in 4.5 years. We didn't have time to wait for government. We decided that, you know, people can make change. I think both of you are telling stories about the power of your ability to make change. I mean, and collaboration is key, right? So we don't try to do anything else except what we do, and we do it well, but we collaborate across all sectors. I mean, I'm seeing the lovely 2 of you at the background here, International Towers. Thank you for always, you know, being on our side, allowing us to prove that we can actually sell commercial grade furniture and have it in a building here, so that just so you know, ReStory is our social enterprise to be able to support the work we do, because we worked out pretty quickly, you know, this is going to be a hard thing to fund. So we better come up with a whole bunch of ideas to try and fund it. So yes, now we have a furniture store as well. Luke is, you know, been a ReLove ambassador for us, introduced by our friend Craig. You know, it's a pretty small network of people, and it is really powerful to come and, as you always say, Luke, have a conversation, because, you know, when we sit down and try and solve this stuff together, it is pretty incredible how we can make change happen. So if you do want to get involved with ReLove, please just get in contact with us, because, you know, bringing your people in to volunteer, it's very powerful. It's certainly not a light-hearted volunteering experience. I know, Kirsten, you've been in and you've experienced it as well and are still coming in. And there's a lot of people here that, gosh, there's quite a few of you in the room, actually. This is so nice to see. But, you know, this is the power of community. People will actually say, I'm going to come in, I'm going to bring my people, I'm going to walk alongside you, and see how actually incredibly easy it is when we work together. One of my favourite comments, I'm going to try and remember it, is Margaret Mead, who says, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. So yeah, it truly is easy for us to do if we do it together and use our smarts and the way that we can contribute together.
Yeah, I love that. Many hands make light work. And if you're looking for something, there is also donations that you can make today to ReLove, aside from your shopping expedition. And I would also like to say thank you to Kim and Nigel for your support always of the initiatives that we have as part of CUPPA and, of course, with ReLove. I want to go to you, Kath, and you, Amanda. Collective responsibility. This is what we're getting into right now. So, you know, businesses, organisations, individuals, the conversations that we have in our homes and with our colleagues. What can everybody in the room start to do differently?
Do you know, I did my first White Ribbon Day keynote for an architectural and land development firm, and I couldn't believe there are 120 people in the room and online. I'd never heard of a company getting someone out to do a talk on White Ribbon Day. And so I think that making these conversations that, one, matter, but two, available. And it's not, I mean, I didn't go into the nitty gritty. It wasn't the hospital photos or anything like that. It was all of these stories that we're talking now, the active questions at the end, but were varied. And I just hope that everyone in that room went home to their dinner tables and, my company just put on this talk. Has anyone ever heard of that? I think that's one thing is, you know, thanks to Luke and to CUPPA and to everyone here, this conversation just broadens outside this room, and that's where they started. It's those you know, conversations into movements that Luke's so good at facilitating, but we can help move that along as a community. So continue these type of conversations. You know, ask anyone on the panel to come and talk to your organisations. I'm talking for you now. Get Catherine's, you know, on your website if you're an organisation. For those large organisations that don't have that on their website, go and do that. But I think it was you, Jade, yeah, as you said, well, walk beside each other. not someone leading, not someone following. Let's walk beside each other and be the change that we all know just from the statistics that we need.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got to be prepared to be those first movers. If we see a problem, to say something, to act on something, and you never know, you may become a Kath and be sitting on this panel, doing amazing things and changing the world. But Kath, collective responsibility, what should people in this room do? What can they walk out of here and act on pretty quickly today?
Well, I think there's a few things. There's one, as an individual, we know that it takes so much courage to leave and so much courage to even recognise you're in this circumstance. So as an individual, if someone ever discloses to you, believe them. Start with that.
Yes.
And try and suspend disbelief. I think in your workplace, know that you are working with people who are experiencing domestic abuse, who are using domestic abuse, and who may be witnessing that or have grown up in a family where that has happened, and recognise that people are bringing all of that to work with them. And if you are, like you talked about, the shame, which shouldn't have been your shame, but there are people who are using or experiencing abuse who are deeply ashamed of what's happening and are trying to stay safe or trying to make sure no one ever knows. So how do you create an environment in your workplace where it is safe to disclose and then to get that help and to ask for help? And then from a more systemic perspective, please do put it in your terms and conditions. Please do recognise that your products, services, systems are going to be misused, and we just need to close those loopholes to help people feel safe and get about their business in a way that is not going to be filled with fear and then the long-term impacts that come with that. As a Gen Xer, there looks like I might be talking to my peeps. I would also say because we're talking about digital violence, I have this really strong compulsion, which I'm going to act on next year because I just need to get to Christmas. But I feel like we're the last generation that grew up without having algorithms distorting our brain and changing the way our brain is wired, and without having exposure to really unsavoury stuff at scale that is damaging the fabric of our society. And I feel really compelled as a Gen Xer to do something about this for my kids and for their kids and for the generations who didn't grow up knowing that it doesn't have to be like this. So I'd really encourage all of you to think about what can you do in that space as well.
I absolutely love that. It reminded me this morning I was doom scrolling, but I was learning as I do on Instagram, and I came across Teach Us Consent, and they had some statistics around controlling the algorithm. And they said that 20% of Gen Z men and boys today believe that women are either lying or exaggerating when they are talking about their abuses. And that is very much influenced by the sort of content that they're seeing, the algorithmic bias that happens and the nudging that happens and the manosphere that they're exposed to, sometimes within as little as 30 minutes of creating an account. So I think those sorts of initiatives are so very important. But I'm with you as well. There's such a role for each and every one of us to play to teach them that it doesn't have to be that way. And in saying that, I'm not sure if this is the right or wrong thing to do, but I just want to acknowledge the men in the room. Yeah. Because so often it's always an all-women panel, an all-women audience, and we can't do this alone. We need allies who are prepared to stand up and actually be those aspirational good men that our young people can actually look at and say, I'm going to be like that, in the absence of many others, I guess. So thank you for making the time to come along to such an important conversation. I think we've come to the end of this incredible panel, our very first Cuppa for a Cause, 16 Days of Activism. Let's not leave it here today. Let's all go from this room out into our homes, into our workforces, and just change that one thing. Think of something that you can do to start contributing to this space. And as we said earlier, many hands do make light work. Please thank our panelists, Ren, Kath and Amanda. And Yep, and a reminder from Cookie, please make sure that we are donating directly to ReLove to furnish those incredible safe homes and to continue the great work that Ren and Ben do as well. Please take the time to do that and go shopping. I know I will be. But thank you everybody for coming along. It was great to see you.